WN segments with this guy. We go out to the West Coast. We bring him in. I wish I had him on more often so we could talk about relevant baseball, but instead we're talking about the aftermath. Maury Brown joins us now. He is Bizball Maury, one of our defending champions around here. Of course, you can find him out at Forbes and out on Twitter doing the business, not only of baseball, but also of motorsports and all sorts of things now at Forbes. But Maury, baseball is your love, much like mine, and, a sort of eternal love. And, as the Orioles get swept away by the Yankees over the weekend and no one's going to the ballpark and all of that, the whole aftermath of what happens when you look up on the screen and see a very frustrated Buck Showalter and see all the list of names on Sunday Night Baseball of all the Machados and the Britons and the Scopes and the just down the Gosman, down the line of the guys that aren't here anymore. It is, I don't know where they're going to pick the business of the Orioles up here in the offseason, and I'll leave it at your feet. Welcome in, man. I know you've been waiting a while to get in here, man.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, as always, Nestor. I think I look at it this way. One of the worst, best things that happened, I think, in a lot of people's minds was this idea that if you rebuilt and you blew up your roster, you would be in a position to win more quickly than if you kind of rotated some chairs in and out. I'm here in the Pacific Northwest, as you noticed, and I watch the Mariners, which are in a bit of a trouble situation in terms that they have some veterans, they have some young guys, but they never can quite get it all to click, and that means.
And it's been that way for 15 years, literally, right?
It's been that way. It's been that way for a while now. Yes, it's been horrible, and so it largely started with the Cubs, and certainly escalated with the Astros. This idea that out of much pain and losing will become likely winning, if not a championship. And that sounds really great on paper, and we have a couple examples of this. And the worst thing about this, Nestor, is that as a general rule, I don't think that owners are largely unique thinkers. I think that they're all pretty much like-minded. In other words, hey, what did those guys do last year to win? We need to do what they did. And I don't think that always works.
Well, it's a copycat. All sports are copycat in that way, right?
All sports are copycats. But the bad thing about it here is that it's not as if the Orioles have this stellar reputation of being able to piece together all the components that they need. They remind me very much of the Mariners, only in a worse way. I think that their windows have been available to them, and they haven't taken advantage of that. And I think that what we're seeing now in terms of this aftermath is, hey, we'll go ahead, we're going to blow this thing up, and then that'll mean that we're going to win. Because, look, it happened for the Astros, it happened for the Cubs. And I just think that that's a really bad way of looking about it. Not all clubs are built the same. All player development systems are not built the same. All the players that are drafted are not built the same and do not develop at the same rate. And I'm not saying that it can't happen. I'm just saying that it's bad to use that model. And, I mean, if anybody has crashed and burned in epic proportions, it's been the Orioles.
Maury Brown is our guest. He is Bizball Maury out in Forbes. All of our WNST programming brought to you by Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. I got the Chicken Palooza shirt on. We're down to the end here. If you want to enter to win, make sure you're getting it in by the 31st. You can find Maury out at Forbes doing the business of baseball. Maury, I've written the Steer Orioles series this summer. I'm not done with it by any stretch of the imagination, although I'm waiting on Adam Jones. I'm waiting on the fate of Buck Showalter. I'm waiting on the fate of Dan Duquette. I'm waiting on the fate of Chris Davis, whom I don't know where the valor is in bringing him back for 5 more years just because you're paying him $30 million a year. But behind all of this, in everything you just said to support that, in that, yeah, the Cubs are nice, and, the Tigers got it together after they lost 150 games a million years ago, and the Royals had to feel good, and the Pirates had to feel, all these teams have had a little cup of coffee. The Mets even, wound up in a World Series a couple years ago. But winning is really, really hard to do, right? And I guess and the hardest thing to do in sports is stop losing. And now that they've started to lose and that black hole starts to get deeper when you see they have no pitching, when you see they have no way of recruiting any players, when you see there is no pipeline, and when you see that they've dealt away for these 15 players that, it's a mixed bag, and a couple of these guys I'm sure will get to the big leagues, but none of these guys are going to replicate Manny Machado, man. man. You know what I mean? None of these guys are going to replicate what Zach Britton was 3 years ago when you left him on the bench in Toronto. And the hard part of this is Theo Epstein has made it look easy, but so easy that there's, 29 other teams where it hasn't looked so easy. I mean, even the Yankees and the Red Sox have been screwing around the last 5 years, which has allowed this window to open for these other teams to compete because it's that hard, even when you're spending $250 million. It's hard to do.
It is. I mean, let's not discount that. I mean, I would say that baseball, more than any other sport, is difficult to win consistently. I mean, there's been a reason that we haven't had dynasties in a while. And in some ways, that's good for the sport. It's good to have the Yankees and the Dodgers and your big, blue chip storied brands and big markets be available and winning. I won't discount that from a larger perspective, but you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I think that the problem really is that the ability for some of these teams with lower revenues to do something with this in these windows, it just becomes that much harder. It's not like basketball. I was listening, I can't remember what it was. I was on SB Nation Radio today, and they had a promo, and one of the guys was going, look at this. We've got LeBron, and he's in the championship, and Kobe was there, and all the top players in the NBA, and then you look over MLB, and there's Mike Trout sitting on the sidelines, and he's going to miss it. Here's all these stars, and what's the problem with baseball? The difference, and this is the thing that just bothers me in terms of context, is you can bring over the best player in baseball to your team and may not win. It is not like the NBA, where you can take LeBron and drop him in damn near anywhere and have him be a major difference maker right out of the gate. It's just the game is entirely different. And so,
and that's why Scherzer's sitting outside, and Pujols, and Trout, and Machado, and you go down the line of all these guys that have played in these organizations. I mean, and finding out that it's not automatic. It feels automatic for the year or two when you're winning, and then all of a sudden I look up, Maury, we got the Royals and the Orioles playing this weekend, right? Like literally. And I'm sure the schedule makers, when they put this together a year and a half ago, thought, well, that'll be a good series. How can that be a bad series? The Orioles and the Royals, they're trending up. Boy, it's amazing how the bottom drops out of these organizations in the modern era, right?
It does. And, I mean, look, if you look at the teams that are able to cycle up quickly, it's the ones with the resources available to them.
Hey, the Red Sox have finished in last place a couple of times the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Nationals have missed their window. I mean, they really did. I mean, and I go back to that team. I don't know why. The front office bothers me almost as much as the Orioles in the sense that whether you like Dusty Baker in terms of his strategic use of his roster and whatnot, as a general rule, I thought he did a very good job with the Nationals. It was very close to making it. And what you did is you made a change for change's sake. And David Martinez basically lost the clubhouse. And they spiraled out of control. And
again, by the way, not that they didn't learn anything by the Matt Williams thing, though, right?
Well, the Matt Williams thing is a total. I mean, yeah, that was horrendous.
Oh, it's delicious for me up here, especially 20 years removed from Davey Johnson and you being an old line baseball guy and all the problems of Steinbrenner and the meddling. You can't change managers every year and a half like socks and think that they're disposable. And I guess in the modern era in sabermetrics, I mean, this is where I usually point out. Did you know that Dusty Baker smoked dope with Jimi Hendrix? You can't fire Dusty, man. Wait, the success they had was so short-lived. And look, Dusty's going to be canonized now. I guess in the same way my man Barry Trotz is going to be canonized. But, they're never going to have it as good as Dusty in the same way that, hey, the Orioles are going to be a long time fixing Showalter once he's gone in 4 weeks, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. So is it the same anymore with the manager in terms of looking at your Earl Weavers or, certainly looking at your Billy Martins or whatever, however you want to look at things strategically.
Well, it's a robo-manager system now, right? Literally.
It is.
Yeah.
It's largely about the clubhouse, and I thought Dusty did a good job in terms of that. I mean, now you've got that situation. The general manager has a lot more weight than they ever did before. And into that, I think that's really kind of where you kind of look right now. I don't know whether you look at Rizzo or if you look at the Lerners I would look at it that way. Look, are they better than they were when they were the Senators? Well, yeah, they are. They're a lot better than that. Have they really lived up to their full potential? No. And that's, I think, the thing that we're going to look at. Look, if they're not worse next year, I'd be really surprised, right? I know there's a lot of talk about bringing Bryce Harper back, and maybe they do, but the situation with that, Nestor, is that what you're doing is basically just keeping the status quo. And if you couldn't make it happen this year, why are you going to be that much better if you dump a bunch of money into Harper then? And there's nothing to say that Bryce Harper wants to come back. And so, I really look, it's really bad. Between the Baltimore, D.C. area right now, it's just not a very good look for baseball. It really isn't. Now, look, all that said, going back to the AL East, look, it's amazing to look at how well the Yankees are playing and go, man, they're not even close to as good as the Red Sox. Now, I don't know if we're going to be looking at 2001 Mariners, 116 wins, mess up in the playoffs. They don't strike me as that kind of team, but they're just running away with it. And you sit there and go, we just better pick our, fights, when to make our fights. And this year wasn't it for us in Baltimore. So, but that's always seems to be the argument. Oh, we'll wait until they're in a down year. Well, they've had a couple of those, and they missed that window. And so, once again, I don't know what's going on there. There seems to be some teams that just seem to be middling and hanging around. And you mentioned it. Baltimore's had a couple of moments of that, and then they just seem to taper off from it and go back down to where they are.
He is Maury Brown. He is Bizball Maury out on Forbes. You can find him out on Twitter writing about the business of sports. I'm going to get into him for some motorsport stuff as well that he's working on with some stories as well on the business side of things. Our business here, of course, our great sponsors. Also brought to you by our friends at the Modell Lyric, where Steely Dan is going to celebrate my 50th birthday on October 11th. No static at all. And, of course, Kansas coming in November as well. John Cusack later on in the month. Go to modell-lyric.com for all of the details. Lots of shows they're going to be announcing in the coming weeks as we get up through the holiday here and into when the kids go back to school. Also, Sporticulture, I'm going to have those Ravens plants and the fantastic floral arrangements behind me. Sporticulture out on the web. My man Court, I'll be telling you all about him and how to ship flowers that are NFL licensed and local here to Baltimore. Really cool story for you that'll be playing out on the fall right here at WNST. Also, Charles Newsonoff and Sons, my man Sydney, getting it done since 1923. They've been doing it out in Parkville. See them on the web at charlesnewsonoff.com. Let's grow old together. All right. Maury, I'm going to throw something at you that I saw, and I sort of make these little lists when I see good stories written and sort of the deeper thinking things, and you're very much in touch with Manfred, and you talk to these guys. You've been at this a long time. Your background was in trying to get baseball to Portland. The next time we get together in the offseason, I'll have more of a conversation about my observations at the All-Star game with our pal Barry Bloom and Arand and those guys from Sports Business Journal, Eric Fisher, and watching the 10 skyscraper cranes go up in the skyline behind Nationals Park, where I really do believe they're building a Yankees there, right? They're building more of a powerhouse there than Baltimore can, from a business community, from a skybox community, from a club suite community, from a preferred seats behind home plate and leather chairs where Geddy Lee sits that are $600 a game like they have in the. We don't have anything like that coming down the pike in this town. We had a city was on fire here 3.5 years ago, and I read a story about socialism and baseball and where the NFL is, where legendarily the Green Bay Packers and the Baltimore Ravens and the Jacksonville Jaguars and small markets can compete with the New York Giants and the Los Angeles Rams now and all of that. Baseball, I've been arguing this for 27 years, man, that if they just would have balanced their boats back in the 90s, this would have been better for everybody. And yet I still see people with this propaganda that somehow baseball's better when the Rays and the Orioles suck and have no money and have to go and try to figure out and solve this Sasquatch Yankees and Cubs and Red Sox and Dodgers, who quite frankly have only gotten bigger and nastier over the last 15 or 20 years, while the other franchises to some degree have become these little regional things, unless they're the Cardinals or something like that, Well,
I think the biggest thing is, first of all, I wrote about this. I think that if in the interest of the players, right, in the interest of the Players Association right now, if I was them, I would ask for a system similar to what we have in the NFL and the NBA, in which the players get basically a percentage of the cap, and that the clubs have to spend that. Now, of course, you're going to overpay for some talent and reset the market and all that stuff.
It would be so much better for them if the Rays had to spend $85 million or $100 million. You know, like in the end, I can't believe the way they fought. I mean, it's so free market, right? It's ideological to Marvin Miller and Donald Fear and the people that have controlled this, but it's never made any sense to me. I always felt like in the long run, when Manny Machado only has 3 suitors, that probably doesn't suit him well. But in the end, you know, the Brett Favres and the Peyton Mannings, those guys have never made the kind of money that A-Rod made, right? Because of the market being, or Chris Davis at the top of the game, right? Because in the NFL, it's pay for play. It's a different system, but from a fan perspective, that would make me more interested in baseball and make more people more interested in baseball. Their system's effed up, and it's always been effed up, and it harkens me back to the 90s when the Orioles had all the money, right? 95, 96, 97, 98, when I went on the radio, and we were the big bad wolf. It was us in Toronto, and everybody else was trying to figure out how to get a stadium built and bend their city over. You were a big part of that out in Portland, you know, and I just think it's sad to me that this have-not structure has still been positioned that Haiti should be going to war with Germany. It's ridiculous. You know, it really is.
Well, I think the biggest thing, though, Nestor, is that even if – so right now, look, I mean, the system that's in place, right, you continue to see it tamping down at the very top, right? But the big problem, of course, is that there are a number of clubs because there's so much weighted on the local revenue side that the ability for some of these clubs to go ahead and even get to 110, 115, $150 million payrolls is really, really difficult. So you might be able to tamp down to $200 million payrolls. But your ability to even get some of these clubs even remotely close to that is virtually nil. And this is largely built upon the idea of the local television deal, because football and baseball are entirely different. Of course, it was, you know, the brands of Pete Rozelle and the idea of 16 games or however many you had in there was a limited inventory, and that you could show that nationally, and there would be a feeding frenzy for those rights, and you would show that equally. With baseball, given the fact that there's 162 games, and those are spread out, and you have basically all the money that comes in from the regional networks, well, you can't really share the national money. The national money is not enough to really get into revenue sharing of any significance. And, of course, it's the battle between the have and the have-nots. And, you know, the revenue sharing model, then you're going to get, well, you know, you got these teams that are just hanging around the bottom, and they're just living off welfare. You get that argument.
Well, I mean, we had that going on back in the 90s, and that's really,
you know,
at the end, well, of course, at the end of the day, it's really dishonor among men, right? Like, in the end, Angelos has been such a bad partner to those guys and suing those guys. And the same thing with Loria. The guys that come in the side door and walk out with $1 billion, not named Seelig, which he did the same thing in Milwaukee. But part of this is the dirty little business of how much money I can squeeze out of it. And the winning part, well, you know, that's nice if it's a byproduct of it. Man, I see these NFL owners go into a room once a year, Maury, and they would poke each other's eyes out to have a parade. I don't really ever feel that way about the baseball guys. I feel like the baseball guys are trying to paddle water and get to a point where they can have a 3 to 5 year period like Pittsburgh or Kansas City or Baltimore's had, and then you see that there's no aftermath to it, at least not here. In a place like Kansas City, maybe. I mean, you tell me how many people are going to be at the ballpark next August in Kansas City as they enter year 2. It's not going to look like it did 2 years ago, that's for sure.
Well, of course not. I mean, it really is that. I mean, you know, it's interesting. I'm watching Seattle, and, you know, here, of course, they have this abysmal, you know, they have the futility record right now for not being in the playoffs. And there's still a lot of people to go. It just becomes one of these things where it's like, hey, let's just go hang out in the sun and have a nice social event and go hang out on the 20 deck and have some beers and watch some baseball. The true competitive nature of some of these teams, once again, seems to fall around the ones that have the serious coin in the lineage and the history. And that's where Baltimore, I'm kind of surprised. Look, is it great that your Seattles or your San Diegos continue to suck? No, of course it doesn't. You'd want those teams to basically rotate in and out and do well. And look, if you Connor Manfred or if I talk to Don Halem or any of the top guys in the league, they want to be able to see teams in 5-year cycles and have at least the ability to be competitive. And the problem is that it requires some money and it requires some smarts. And the difficulty with that is you don't have a lot of both. And I just think that some of it is difficult. And I think some of them just go, we're going to stumble into something. I look into the A's. The A's are a prime example of this. They're overachieving on some other kind of level right now. I mean, Bob Melvin, if Bob Melvin doesn't win AL Manager of the Year, which he probably won't, Cora I think is going to probably get it. But I think that Bob Melvin has to be in that discussion because he's done so much with so little. You stumble into that every once in a while. Even the Mariners, the first half of the season, you were like, how are they pulling this off? They're on the wrong side of run differential. They should be getting trounced, and yet they came out on the right side of things. And then things, straightened out in the second half of the season. It became the team that they are.
But, Maury, even like a team like Atlanta and Philadelphia on the come with a couple of good ball players, and Philadelphia spent some money, and Atlanta spent some money on Markakis that turned into nice money or whatever. You're still, every time you walk on the field with the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Dodgers or the Cubs, you're walking onto a field, or even the Nationals, for the amount of money they spent, they've got 6 or 7 players that are better than your top 2, and then you got to go figure it out over 3 games or 4 games on a weekend. And, maybe you get roughed up, maybe you get pushed around, and then you hold your own when you beat the snot out of the Reds or the Padres or the Orioles or, whomever it is. Those teams, the Atlantas and the Philadelphias, they wouldn't smell so good if they were in the American League East. They would probably just smell like Tampa, which smells like nice little story, but who cares in Tampa when you're 20 games out of first place?
Yeah, and really, if you think that it's bad now, wait until this next year. So I have said, and I've got a lot of people that think I'm full of it, but not every baseball season can be great. And if you're a baseball fan, you see there's some great plays every day, and that is absolutely true. But as a baseball season goes, I'm not really high on this one. And a lot of that, I think, got set up in the offseason when the Dodgers and the Yankees stood pat and didn't do anything. And that really set us going into the season with not a lot of excitement. Those 2 teams normally set the table, them and the Red Sox and, the usual suspects. They're going to reset their tax rates, and they're going to go flipping wild. And when that happens, then your disparity becomes even greater again. They're going to reset their luxury tax threshold rates and their tax rates, and they're going to be able to overspend again. So, look, I don't know how this works. I really don't know how you make it an equitable thing. Sans the idea, and I don't think that there's any way in this world that the owners will go for this. And this is not just me talking about this, Nestor. There are baseball insiders in very high places that have told me that if you went to the owners right now and the players said, you know what, we'll take a salary cap as long as you guarantee a certain percentage of baseball-related revenues to us, the owners would say no. And that's incredible when you think about.
Well, the owners wouldn't open their books. The owners don't. No one wants No one wants you to know how much money Peter Angelos is putting in his pocket.
It's not just that, Nestor. It's really it's more than that. I think that they figured out that they're making a lot more money. They can pay the players in some quarters a lot more, and they're making a lot more money now than when things were upside down in the 80s and the 90s. And that's the thing. They've been able to spend MLB Advanced Media and then create BAMTech, and it was all built off the players, of course, right? All the games streaming live. They're making billions off of the BAMTech thing, which is not baseball-related revenue, but was built off of MLB Advanced Media. That's incredible. That's why Tony Clark and the players are so upset, because they see the owners are getting really rich, and they're missing that money, and it's because they're in a system that doesn't allow for it. But I'm telling you, the owners would not now, and that's incredible. You think about, sure, there would be your Jerry Reinsdorfs, and there might even be, your Angelos and some of the old-timers. But right now, if you went to the owners as a general pool and said, would you take a salary cap? Now, after all that you did in the 90s and the 80s, they would say no. And it's because they're like, hey, we're in a good position now. Hey, the players have.
Well, it's all about the leverage, right?
Yeah,
until the players are willing to hold hands and say we're not going to play, which they've done plenty of times in our lifetime. Maury, I don't want to give them any ideas. Look, I'll take a TO right now. I want to promote what you're doing out at Forbes. I know you're working on some motorsport stuff as well as Shoot the Thrill, the greatest AC/DC tribute band anywhere in the Pacific Northwest, because I've seen them on the YouTube television. Tell them something, Maury. What's going on out there at Forbes, man?
Well, I mean, first of all, you mentioned it. Somehow in this world I got trapped into, I willingly went into the kind of the motorsports field, and it's been interesting to look at the sponsorship space and look at what is happening with that. And I think that you're going to see something here. I'm of the mind that this economic system that we're in right now, in this bull market, which has been incredible, right?
For sports.
Is about ready to run the end of its life here within the next year or two. And if there's problems with some sports that are really dedicated around the sponsorship space, they're really going to struggle when the economy turns around. So it's interesting to look at NASCAR, and I'm going to be doing a story on IndyCar. I already talked to the CMO of IndyCar, and I'm going to be going out to Portland where they have the Portland Grand Prix this weekend and looking at that. And beyond that, it's really been, I looked at the Big Three basketball, which I find is kind of an amazing entertainment thing. Seeing Nancy Lieberman win, that. Now, sure, it's a lot of fun. It's 3-on-3, and it's a lot of old, washed-up guys, but it's kind of entertainment. So it's largely been that, and, of course, I'm going to be looking at the baseball season and really looking at how the revenues are and where we're looking at and talking about your Orioles and how they're doing. So that's going on. On terms of Shoot to Throw, we had the best year ever. We played to some tremendously large crowds, so I'm internally grateful for that. And we got a few bookings in some smaller clubs, and we'll get ready to ramp up again as we go into the new year.
Well, and I had to think of you when Trevor Hoffman went in the Hall of Fame too. So hey, there's so many AC/DC references out there. So I proudly wear my Shoot the Thrill shirt, you know that. But I'm wearing my Chicken Palooza shirt right now on behalf of Royal Farms. Maury, always a pleasure, man. I'm sorry we can't stay longer. We'll get some rock and roll in. I definitely want to talk about ELO and stuff that's happening out in the rock and roll space and some more baseball. But I'll save that for football season. How about that?
You got it, man. You have me on any time, Nestor.
Maury Brown is our partner in crime and Kemosabe out in the Portland, Oregon area. He writes for Forbes. He is a Bizball Maury out on Twitter. No better follow out there than him. Very astute on all things business and sports, but loves him some baseball as well as some expansion baseball out there in Portland, where maybe one day it'll be the Portland Orioles. We can only hope not. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. It's all brought to you by buyatoyota.com. Morning newspaper ships to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. Also brought to you by the Maryland Jockey Club, where Charlie Ekman won the first race on Sunday at Timonium. Go to sleep on them cherries. By the way, the Maryland Jockey Club's entries on the front of WNST.net, as well as in our morning newspaper, shipped to you each and every morning. Breaking news, you get it first on the WNST text service. I got the Hayden Hurst text first. I didn't want it. It's all brought to you by our friends at Coons Florida Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday getting you ready for that traditional Ravens-Redskin venom and hatred on Thursday night in fake football. Fake football. Oof. 5th preseason game. Please bring me the Buffalo Bills. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Dallas and Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.